I'm going to go ahead and bring out one of my all-time favorite. When I talk about my sisters, I mean, this is, as someone said earlier, is that your real sister? No, it's my fake sister. No, it's my real sister. And so Monique Nadeau and Tara, her dietitian. So you guys are going to get the expertise. And my sister is relentless. Like, she will make sure that you get this information because she wants you to live your best life. So I love you.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Thanks, you guys, for staying to almost the very end. So, as my sister said, I'm Monique Nadeau, and this is Tara Linens. Tara is a registered dietitian who formerly was with Mass General Hospital in Boston. So I think, oh, look, you have it right behind me. So let me go right here. So we don't sing, no. We don't dance, and I only twerk on Saturdays. So you're out of luck because it's Wednesday. But what we're going to do is help you that the next time you decide to dance, you shake a little bit less other parts of your body. No, actually, my passion is good nutrition. And if you imagine that a bit of a downer statistic is that 50% of Americans, adults in the United States, deal with some sort of chronic disease. And in fact, we have 86 million Americans, male and female, who have pre-diabetes. And a lot of what drives that is what we put into our body in the form of food. And I like to say that food is the medicine that we eat 3 times a day. So Tara and I today, we've got about 15 minutes with you. And we thought we'd leave you with a couple of thoughts. One as an entrepreneur in the food space in San Francisco, and 2 as a registered dietitian. So I'm just going to do some quick fire questions for her, and we'll go from there. So Tara, what are some of the basic nutrition principles you encourage families to adopt?
So one of the most basic nutrition principles, and maybe you guys have seen this before, so this is what I like to call our balance plate. This is the Harvard Healthy Eating Plate. And I think it's a huge step up from our old food pyramid because it actually illustrates what we eat on a regular basis in a way that we can relate to. So you'll see that half the plate, usually I'm encouraging half the plate to be those non-starchy vegetables where that really, you can really fill up and, bulk out on these nutrient-dense foods that are high in water, high in fiber, low in calorie. And then also including our whole grains or our starchy vegetables like sweet potatoes or corn, and then our healthy protein as well. And protein takes about 2 hours to break down and digest, so it keeps us fuller for longer. So that's definitely something, we're really rounding out the plate. So we actually have a couple of real-life examples, which, I think is always, really helpful to show. I'm a visual person. In terms of what might be some unbalanced versus balanced. And then this one, because the other foods that you saw were listed out in different groups and kind of segmented. This is a little bit mixed. So we have a green color from this pasta, which looks healthy, but it's really actually just pesto. So there's no veggies actually in here. Whereas the other one that I'm blocking in front of, I'll move shortly, includes some diced tomatoes, some eggplant, some other vegetables in there, and over 2 servings of veggies in there. And then the next slide that we have will showcase another way where you can really see, it's very clear, broken down into we have our fish for our lean protein and our non-starchy vegetables, such as the broccolis and tomatoes, and then that's some quinoa for our whole grains in those appropriate portions. And additionally, behind me is a curry, so a mixed dish that you can kind of see where all those veggies can kind of fill up as the balance plate in real life.
And would you say, Tara, that this approach is a one-size-fits-all, suits the needs of all families?
Yeah, that's a great question. So everyone's balanced plate is going to look a little bit different because the average family has about 4 different sets of dietary requirements right now. So whether it's a food allergy or someone managing a chronic condition, we all have something that's going to work a little bit differently for each of us. So your plate might look different than mine. And what we're studying now is we're seeing so much in terms of nutrigenetics and nutrigenomics genomics and our bodies breaking down foods in different ways. So some of us might need higher protein or reduced carbohydrate or different percentages of those nutrients to really feel our best, to whether it's managing our blood sugar levels or something that, different foods that sustain us. So, that's something that we're really taking a look at. So the one size fits all doesn't really work. It needs to be individualized.
And it's fascinating because even whether how we perceive the taste of cilantro is based on 6 different genes. So it's, again, we're not all the same. So what is the single best thing that you could tell to someone to change their diet for themselves and their family?
So 87% of Americans don't meet the requirements for their vegetable intake. So if you were just going to focus on one very simple thing, it would be to bulk that out. So even if you can't hit that balanced plate initially, just being consistent with getting those vegetables on the plate. And it could be fresh, it could be frozen, the nutrients are the same. So that would be the single biggest thing, I would say.
And what are some of the other recommendations? What are the core skills that people need at home to eat a healthy diet?
Some of the other recommendations, I think, would be focusing on foods, whole foods instead of processed foods. So you can identify every single food on that plate, but when you're dealing with a food that has an ingredient list a mile long, that's where, we start to get into some difficult areas. And then I would say in terms of those core skills, it would be focusing on meal planning, because that's where 90% of the patients walking through my door, they know if I were to put an apple or a bag of chips in front of them, they know what is the healthier option, but it's what are you choosing and why. And meal planning, although it can take a little work up front, it can really provide that structure so that you're able to meet your goals, and also that you're not deciding and doing at the same time. So that way you're spending time with your family instead of getting home at 7:30 from a long day and then trying to figure out what's for dinner as you open the fridge.
And what would you say are the biggest challenges that you see in your clinical work that families face in trying to implement this?
I think with any behavior change, we're all in the busiest times of our lives right now, so it's so easy to grab something quick and convenient. But in terms of adopting these, behavior changes to really get into meal preparation and planning, I think that would be, some of the hurdles. And a lot of the families I work with have very severe diets or food restrictions that they have to adapt. Even in my own family, my siblings have severe allergies to peanuts, tree nuts, eggs, fish, shellfish, sesame, and a lot of others. And so my mom, in terms of planning those meals, that was really overwhelming for her. But I think in terms of...
Does anyone here have any food allergies in their family? So can you raise your hand?
Yeah.
We see there's about 8 million children in the United States that have severe food allergies. So that was a really interesting statistic. What would you say, for those who are thinking about nutrition and sort of the latest trends, what are we going to see over the next few years, 5 years, 10 years?
So the biggest trend emerging right now is personalized nutrition. So really knowing that, kind of what we alluded to earlier, where it's not that one-size-fits-all approach. And more than ever, people want to know what's going in their food, and what, they're really curious, and they want transparency, and they want to know where their food comes from. So that's definitely one of the biggest trends that we're seeing. And I would say we're also seeing more trends into some plant-based eating, again, less processed foods. People are becoming more aware of the amount of sugar in their food and some of the damaging effects that too much sugar might have in the diet in place of nutrient-dense foods.
I wonder if you started to choose your breakfast and you realized that there's going to be 6 teaspoons of sugar in a yogurt. Or if in fact you're going to eat as much sugar for breakfast in a yogurt as you would a Snicker bar, for example, if people would still make those same choices. So I think it's very interesting as we add transparency. After becoming a registered dietitian, and for those of you who don't know the process, there's a 4-year degree and then they do a year clinical work. I think there's 3 different sections of that. And then dietitians go on to specialize. And as Tara mentioned, she specializes in GI and food allergies. what were some of the things that surprised you most through your education that you didn't know before that you would be telling someone either thinking of going into it or just like talking to your family?
Yeah, well, I think for me, what sticks out is, does everyone remember the low-fat boom of the 90s? You know, all the snack bowls, cookies, right? And so, I feel like I kind of that was really prevalent in my diet for that time, and all those low-fat foods. And we turned out what happened, we took the food out of everything and everyone gained weight. We took the fat out of everything and everyone gained weight. But, we replaced it with refined sugar. So I think that was something that, really as I got into studying the field of nutrition, really learning, the negative effects of processed foods and really more on whole foods. And so that's something that, I take away. I don't know that I would have predicted back then that I'd be recommending that someone choose that real deal, regular, full fat ice cream over, something that is, super processed, like one of those fat-free cookies. So as long as it's, portion controlled, that, enjoying the real stuff. So that's what I would say surprised me, I think, going into it.
So a little bit of the good stuff goes a long way.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All right, awesome. So then, these are just some of our, we're going to transition a little bit here into some of our, other slides. But, so you've thought a lot about everything that we've talked about, you in terms of implementing all of these behavior changes with your own family. So can you tell us a little bit about why you started Eat Love?
So I think for me, it's like we went through a little bit of the basics of nutrition. And I think it's always great to be reminded, again, life gets really busy. For me personally, I thought, well, why is this so hard? So before I even launched the company, I actually convened 70 women in my living room and asked them, do you find this hard to get home and actually cook well-balanced meals? And we had, physicians and teachers and office workers and bus drivers. And it was overwhelming because, let's face it, the majority of cooking at home tends to fall on the mom, or tends to fall on the female in the house. And I think as I looked at this picture, like this is the picture we all think, or perhaps a version of this in our mind as to what home could look like, right? You've got the husband helping, you've got bowls that match with all of the ingredients for the pizza on there in like perfectly matching bowls. Even the light is coming through perfectly in the window. And I just thought, you know what? Just like we have people, our friends and our family, who won't eat in front of us, and like we're not the food police. It's all about moderation, and it's all about trying to, food is love. And as the Buddhists say, food is the memories of my mother. And so for us, and like as we think about it, we all want to be able to enjoy a good meal. And we all want to be able to do that without being completely stressed out. Because let's face it, our life doesn't look like this. It's far more likely to look like that at home. And if you are like my English husband, who likes to say that our children look like a chimp's tea party, I actually pulled from the family album from when my kids were little. So just to think I'm coming at this with this is these cute little blonde things over here. These were my kids at the table throwing food. And I think it's just a matter of making time, and I think, as Tara says, planning. So in the case for us about the Eat Love, we take a technology approach. We evaluate all the nutrition and the food waste so that you can prepare healthy meals. And at the end of the week, the refrigerator is empty. You're not throwing things out. You're actually been able to go to the grocery store and take home what are ingredients that are going to be step-by-step instructions. But even if you decide to do this on paper and you don't use the technology of Eat Love, that's great. At least you're cooking at home, and at least you're spending time with your family. Because ultimately, this is my real little chef. And this is what happens when you cook with kids. And as my chef advisor, Jonathan Waxman, likes to say, the worst thing that's going to happen, and he is wearing one of those gloves that you can't cut off your fingers. The worst thing that's going to happen is you're just going to sew it back on. And I think this little guy is now 14, and he actually came home the other day, and he said, Mom, I've had a really, really stressful day. I had a physics exam. I hear there's a really nice piece of fish in the refrigerator. And what I'm thinking, citrus marinade, what do you think? And then he goes in, and he went into the refrigerator, and he said, you know what, I'm going to make some new potatoes. He's 14, and I'm going to do some green beans. And he walked in, put on that apron that my mom gave him, and said, Alexa, play me some jazz. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I'm working too much on enough. But he was a perfect little man who's going to be a perfect husband. And I think it's this idea that is how do you get the members of your family to help you? Because we're not going to win any awards of being the best cook or the best mom if we're exhausted at the end of the day. So I'm a firm believer in automate, delegate in order to celebrate. And I think that they show data shows that for some strange reason we do not know, when families cook and prepare together and eat together, it is like no other activity. It's not like great to go to a baseball game, great to watch a movie, but for some reason, when you actually share food, and this is not just within, families, parents to kids, but across, and that goes back to this idea that food is love. So Tara and I just wanted to come and spend a few minutes talking to you about some of the key areas of nutrition, and first and foremost, to enjoy the people that are near to dear to you. And if your child can handle a small knife, they're not. Interestingly, my son never cut himself, and then I actually went and started preparing with his brand new knives, and I'm the one that needed stitches. So it's totally possible. Thank you guys for listening to us. And we do have a booth. Come say hi.
Yep.
And thank you very much.
Thank you.